speak no evil. I thought I'd just continue it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Book Club for Movies. Amy and Samir here. It is Thursday, January 21st. It is Genre Thursday. We are doing part 3 of 4 of our true crime documentary specials that we are talking about for the month of January. Samir, how are you doing?
It has been a busy day, but my break is now.
Good. We're always happy that you spend your break time with us when you could be doing whatever else you want to do. Literally anything else.
But this is what I want to do with my break.
I'm really excited to talk about what we're going to be talking about today. But first, let's talk about Hola, hello, Andres. ¿Cómo estás? Before we talk about today's film, and we'll definitely talk about the director of today's film, but let's talk about yesterday. Yesterday, we focused on actress Anya Taylor-Joy and Emma, which came out last year. This was the second time I had seen this, first time for Samir. A few of our viewers said that they had seen this. So I love this movie. I think, especially compared to the 90s Emma with Gwyneth Paltrow, which I also really like, but I like that this is more humorous to me. This one really seems like it's a comedy, and I love like all the little quirks that they added to it with these characters. I think this movie should win an Oscar for best use of wallpaper, because my God, all the wallpaper.
I feel like if they're gonna give an award for wallpaper, Wes Anderson needs to like win the flagship award for wallpaper in a movie. Although I did love at the end credits when they had that lovely sort of like, you know, the leaf vine that like ran down the sides, each side of the credit screen at the end. Like I like that because I was like, oh, I want a print of that actually for something.
That this is nominated when the Oscar nominations come out, at least for art design. I don't know who would really get any other nominations, but certainly the art direction and costumes were pretty great. Now I know Samir had some thoughts on Emma.
I did have some thoughts on it.
Let's hear.
I unfortunately did not find it funny. So I didn't laugh.
Oh, I was like Mom and
I laughed maybe twice. I laughed in the movie. So there was something about the film, everything seemed tonally so out of whack. Like you could tell that this is a person who had never made a full-length narrative feature before. So there was a lot of problems in terms of pacing and just telling the story that just did not happen. Like if you had not read Emma, you would have no idea what's going on in this movie most of the time. Like I had no idea who was related to whom, for what reason. And I knew who was related to whom, and I felt so confused watching it. So I was like, okay, I feel like I'm playing catch up, trying to like link all the people together. So there was like that sort of just, I think, a first time jitter director thing, transferring from music videos to filmmaking. But the thing that shocked me the most was I felt like Anya Taylor-Joy was either misdirected or miscast in this role, because I did not find... I looked up reviews of it, and other people had said this too, where, you know, in this story, you are like totally rooting for Emma. Even though you realize that she's kind of spoiled and, you know, a little vain, or she thinks she knows more than she does. Like, you're always rooting for her. And when she finally realizes that, like, she and Mr. Knightley are, like, supposed to be the one, like, you are so overjoyed for her when that happens. I was only overjoyed for Harriet finally getting to be with her farmer. I literally felt like, I don't know what was up with Anya Taylor-Joy in this movie, but she just made this character felt so cold and cruel to everyone. So when she insults her friend, it feels like, oh, well, this is kind of how she's been the whole movie. She hasn't really been nice or charming to anyone. It was really, to me, shocking that they made this character so kind of joyless and like leaden. I was really like shocked. I'm like, this is supposed to be light frothy, effervescent, it floats, and I just felt like so weighed down by this movie. And then the music was like, you know, did you ever go to a studio audience for like filming of a sitcom?
Not for
Have you ever been in there? Where like, or any show, there's always going to be an applause sign that blinks at you when you're supposed to applaud or when you're supposed to laugh to create the track for the show. I felt like this music was like a constant sign telling me to laugh. Like, and unfortunately, the filmmaking doesn't keep pace with the jauntiness of the score. So I felt like the whole time, I'm like, okay, you really need you need to be able to film something that moves with this music. And there were so many just still shots, so many medium shots, so little movement of the camera and so little activity on the screen. And it was just like, there was so much there that I was like, you know, somebody else should have made this movie because Anya Taylor-Joy is such a unique presence on screen. I do feel like there is, because there were moments where there's flashes where I'm like, oh, there's the character. There is Emma. That's Emma. Like this, sometimes it would come through and I couldn't understand when and where the director was like figuring out how to direct this magnificent actor she has to get that performance. So sometimes she got it, and then other times it was like, why are you telling her to glare at people so much? Like, that's not this character, like, at all. I was a little sad that we didn't get more of the farmer that Harriet wanted to be with, because I thought that was you got to see him twice. He was in the movie for like 3 or 4 minutes. I'm like, that's really unfortunate because you don't get to see what it is she loves about him or why people they just assume, oh, he's a farmer, they're rich. That's all you need to know about why they don't think he's a good match. And they just kind of moved on. And I'm like, well, that was sort of like the best part of my favorite adaptation of this book in Clueless, was that you really got to know that character. And of course, in Clueless, it's like the stoner character who dresses, you know, like a skater boy, you know, and like, so there's a lot more delineation of like why they don't hang out with that person and why they don't hang out with this person and why this person's not acceptable for this reason. You get a lot more context, ironically, with the characters there in a shorter movie, ironically, but I'm like, oh, I wanted to see more of them, like, and how they loved each other, how they looked at each other, but they're kept apart for most of the movie, so you never see that character. I was delightfully surprised at the flash of male nudity that opened this film. I was just like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. That is the kind of introduction every man needs to make in a film. Only he should have turned around. We didn't need to see just the booty.
PG. I understand everything you're saying about the character of Emma, and with me I'm one of those people who has not read the book. So I know. No, I haven't. So I am comparing this mostly to the Gwyneth Paltrow version that Judy was weird. I did feel like this character of Emma was more stuck up and felt like she was better than everyone else. But I kind of liked that because I felt like her character really like changed more of like realizing, you know, like especially at the end when Harriet finds out who her father is, and it's like, oh, he's just like a tradesman. He makes galoshes or whatever it is. And she says it in a way of kind of like, are you going to judge me because we know who my father is and he's just a tradesman? And so it's like, she knew it too. It's like, you're going to judge me for this. And she says, you know, when he's here, please bring him to dinner. Like, I would love to meet him. And you can see Harriet so relieved. So I liked the arc. I kind of liked that she was cool.
Well, that arc is always,
and
I would say the arc is always there.
Yeah,
the point of the character though is that arc is there, but on top of that, you have a character that, despite those flaws, you are still completely rooting for that character, and you still like this character. I didn't find her a likable person, and the character is supposed to be a likable character. Everybody likes her. You know, all the audiences who read the book liked her. You know, like that's what you're supposed to be. That's why I say, as crazy as it sounds, Clueless really is the best adaptation of this book. And I think the reason for that is that it's the only one that attempted to update it to when it was made. And ironically, that is really the one timeless version of this novel on film, because I feel all these other ones are going to be somewhat forgotten in 10 years. Galoshes.
There's never enough galoshes.
I do love that. It's a word I've always loved, but I've never lived in a place where you needed galoshes.
Where were the galoshes in Clueless, Samir? My God.
There were fabulous shoes in Clueless. Don't you remember? She shops for these things.
There weren't any galoshes.
She has the computer-programmed wardrobe.
Well,
but no, I feel like
I enjoyed Emma, and
I know you enjoyed it.
I might have a totally different perspective if I had read the book and felt a lot more attached to that character. Then I would probably totally be on your side. And I think it is kind of a mixed thing. Like here, Crystal saying that she didn't think Anya was that great as Emma either. Yeah, so it's, you know, if you haven't seen this movie.
You know who I thought was the best in the movie actually was the actor who played Mr. Elton. That actor just understood exactly what the material was.
Yeah.
He was the star of this film. Him and the actress who played
or the previous movie. Yeah, comparing it to the previous movie, that character is played by Alan Cummings, who was also hysterical in that role. And that was something like I remember watching Emma when I was a kid, and always thinking like, oh, this character's so weird. And so that was something when we found out they were making another Emma. It was like, how is this actor going to top Alan Cummings? And they were both. I can't really say who was better. I think they both brought their own quirkiness and creepiness. Just even the part in the carriage where he like undoes his little cape, just like, like. Oh.
I know I was very delighted by him and the actress who played Miss Bates. I loved her. And what was fun for me, even though I did not enjoy this film and I don't think it was well made or funny, I know these are harsh words, but I did have fun actually reminding myself of which characters are which in Clueless and which ones they're based on. So I realized that like in Clueless, there's a couple of characters that are sort of merged together. And this is the first time I really realized that Jane Fairfax and Mrs. Elton are basically fused into the character of Amber in Clueless. Remember? Whatever.
Seen it,
if she doesn't do the assignment, I can't do mine.
Okay. I think I know
that character is a fusion of Jane Fairfax and Mrs. Elton.
That actress,
and so I was like, oh, I can see exactly the elements that were pulled from each character to make that character. There was a lot of that kind of stuff that was that I was also getting out of it. I do appreciate that the director actually did this photo shoot for this poster. I do think that they probably were not the right choice to make a film with Emma. Like they should probably should have started with something that's not an iconic novel of. Yeah, and
I'm sure you would look to the
comedy, and because comedy is difficult. You can't. I don't know if I would like to see more from this director, honestly, because this was really, to me, this was really bad.
As Samir had said earlier, this was the director's first feature film, which I didn't realize. But she's done short films. She's done a lot of music videos for Beck in like the 2006 to 2007 era. Yeah, a lot of short films, a lot of music videos. This was her first feature film.
And that was Michel Gondry's path into filmmaking also. So it's not to say that because somebody made music videos before that they can't make a feture film. It's just maybe the learning curve is different for different people. Michel Gondry is like a pretty revolutionary his artist, I think, with even just a few major films, like, you know, those films are part of the cultural language of American cinema now. You know, people refer to it, they know it, it's like a part of people's lives. It takes a pretty revolutionary, amazing director to make something like that. So you know that if you have an ability to tell a story visually, whether it be a music video format or short film, the talent is there to do it in a longer form. You just have to get accustomed to it. I don't think that this was the property that she should have attempted to make her entree into long form narrative filmmaking, probably would have started with something that didn't require such precision and such mastery of comic timing and editing and shooting. There's a lot of elements that go into it. I do think that this film sort of brings out those things. I do wish that Anya had been given the chance to make the character more joyful and more fun and likable, because it's hard to go along with a character that you just don't like. I was surprised. I actually disliked her character a lot. I was like, you're just mean to people. You're just really petty and spoiled and mean. And that is definitely not what Jane Austen wanted for this character. So I don't know why the director was going for that. Because like I said, there were flashes where you get this oh, there it is. I see it. And then it would carry for a few minutes. I'm like, okay, they're on the right track. And then something would happen and it would just break that spell for me. I'm like, oh, wow. I will watch you in Queen's Gambit and admire your brilliance there, Anya Taylor-Joy, because even in the few minutes I saw of that show, instantly I got so much more character out of those few minutes than I did out of all this movie. I was just so sad because I was really looking forward to this because I love this kind of thing. I love period dramas. I love big costume dramas. I love aesthetically overstuffed images. That's totally me.
Yeah,
I was like, oh. Yeah.
Just because you don't really like the 90s one either, which one do you like? If you had to pick, which one do you think is better?
I would pick the 90s one because I feel like Gwyneth Paltrow at least gave more of the joyful notes to the character. And I do feel like that was probably encouraged by the screenwriter and the director of that film. And I feel like Anya Taylor-Joy, I think she was hampered in some way by what the director wanted. Because a really good actor will find a way to give the director what they want and still give the performance they want. It's a very hard balance to find. But it's almost impossible if the director just doesn't truly know how to form a long form film. I think it may have made it difficult for her to get through because she's also probably, most actors are like, okay, well, I'll do what you want. I don't know if that's what I would do, but we'll go in that direction and I'll make your movie. I'll make your movie happen. And I feel like she probably did that for this director. And then we saw the whole thing. I saw the whole thing together. I didn't like it. This, however, is a movie that a lot of critics did really enjoy. So I am definitely not in the majority on that.
I feel like it got mixed reviews, though, from what I had heard about it.
I was looking on Rotten Tomatoes, and a lot of them were very positive. And
IMDb,
a lot of them very positive about her.
Point something rating. Yeah, so that's just on IMDb. But I think this movie's fun.
Well, it's tomato meter rating.
I like it. So see for yourself. See if you're on Team Amy or Team Samir, and we'll join forces and fight the other one too. Yeah.
Oh yes, Andres, I have seen The Favorite. Well. I actually loved The Favorite.
I liked it.
I loved that movie.
The love word, but I did enjoy it. I think I enjoyed the acting more than anything else in it. I mean, obviously it won Oscars, and all three of those women were nominated. Yes, we will start a civil war on Emma. But it's on
yeah, this is the most civil of wars, yes. Truly.
We shall slap each other with gloves. You still need to watch Bridgerton. They have duels in it.
I will. I promise.
Yes. We all heard it, people. We all heard it.
Oh, y'all heard the Of course I'll watch it. You told me there's more nudity in it.
There is. I said, if you enjoy the pop of nudity in this, you're really going to like Bridgerton. As will non-gay men, because there's a lot of female nudity as well. But check out Emma. It's on HBO Max. See what you think of it for yourself. Yeah, but let's move on to something completely different. We mentioned there was going to be the whiplash of Emma to today's film. Yeah. Let's talk about Murder and Death Row. As best told by Mr. Werner Herzog. Can I just say really quick? I mean, we're going to say so much about Werner Herzog. I mean, he's director, screenwriter, actor. It took me a while to watch season 1 of Mandalorian when I didn't have Disney Plus for a while once it came out and everyone was obsessed with it. And so I was just seeing things like on Facebook, people talking about it, and everything was like Baby Yoda this, Baby Yoda that, like Baby Yoda everywhere. And then when I actually watched it, I was like, how come no one was raving about the fact that Werner Herzog is in this? Like, that's who I was excited about. Yeah, so he's an actor as well. One of the most distinct and magical voices. I'm waiting for the Calm app to get him to do a sleep story because I would just
Oh
listen
my
to that
God.
every night.
I would actually pay for the Calm app if that
I
happened.
do pay for the Calm app.
Absolutely
It's not that
would.
expensive.
Although
It's
I must
60
say,
per year.
Laura Dern's stories on Calm are like the best ones, I think,
Oh,
because she
I
has the
haven't listened
perfect
to that
voice for
one
that
yet.
app. Add Laura Dern's. They're like perfect. But no, I would absolutely pay to hear Werner Herzog read me sleepy time stories. Absolutely. But I love that. So, Andres, I remember, so he put that glorious madman. The funny thing about that term, I remember once wanting to call him crazy. I was interning at Landmark Theaters and I was doing like their social media. And I was like supposed to send some tweet out about a talk Q&A about a Werner Herzog, like a new documentary that was coming out at the time. And so I was like, oh, see the craziness, the Werner Herzog. And then the guy who ran the PR, he's like, don't say that, please. You're talking, like, this is a Landmark Theaters, like, Twitter account. Please don't call filmmakers crazy. I'm sure he would not appreciate that. I was like, oh, that's actually a really good point. I'm like, you probably want him to do stuff for you in the future. And I guess insulting him on your Twitter account is not a great idea. But then I remember looking this up because I was like intrigued when my boss said that. I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna look up crazy Werner Herzog. And I forgot when it was in our class, but I was taking a class on him at the time at Cal, and there was a quote up specifically about someone calling him crazy. And he's like, I think it's funny that people think I'm crazy. Like, because I think that Hollywood is by far the craziest. Like, when you really think about it, look at what Hollywood is and what it does. Like, in all honesty, that is the most insane thing in entertainment, is what you get out of a Hollywood movie. Like, these are complete fantasies. And he's kind of just being brutally honest in his own unique way, which doesn't necessarily, like, so if we're going to call things crazy, like, what's crazier? Like, I'm trying to get at a higher truth. And, like, there are a lot of movies in Hollywood that are like, here's a rich heiress with a pet leopard chasing after a bone with the paleontologist, played by Cary Grant. Like, I don't know, does that not sound crazy to you? And I'm crazy and that's not crazy. So, where is the definition of crazy here? But it also leads to his view on how cinematic truth operates, or he called it an accountant's truth, like a truth of just facts. If you were just reporting facts, there would be no cinema, there would just be books full of facts. So it's all in how, you're only going to get at the truth of a matter, through construction and stylization of the material. And when you think about it, there's no documentary that is just raw footage. So the idea that you're always going to make your documentary about trying just to report what the real truth is and just report facts, well, you're never going to make a film if that's all you're going for. There has to be something more there. And the way you present it, is a part of the truth itself. So, every documentary is formed. You don't, like I said, you don't just see raw footage, you see something that has been shaped and edited, things added in here and there. So Werner Herzog does not see himself as crazy. He sees himself as an artist who's trying to get the truth out to you.
Yeah, and he has certainly done some amazing documentaries as well as narrative films. I mean, some of things that we watched in film school, like Geary, The Wrath of God, Grizzly Man being another one of his most popular documentaries. He's done documentary shorts. I mean, this man has been directing. He only has 73 directing credits, but that includes documentaries, TV shows, short films, feature films. His first short film was all the way back in 1962. He's got 59 writing credits, an actor as well. He's a producer. He was on The Simpsons a few times. He's just, I think he's someone that a lot of people know who he is as like this personality too, of I mean, like, two of my favorite YouTube videos ever. There's one of him, there's some weird interview where he's talking about chickens and how he thinks chickens are like this dumbest animal. Like, you look into a chicken's eyes and there's like no life behind it. and then there's another one, this wasn't him, but the Werner Herzog Where's Waldo video is forever one of my all-time favorite things.
Oh, yes.
It's someone impersonating him. It's someone parodying just like his documentary style and his commentary on things. But earlier today, Samir sent me this interesting clip of Werner Herzog giving a talk. I forget where that was, at some.
It was somewhere in New York. It was at DocFest. It was at a documentary film fest.
Yes, he did do Grizzly Man. But he was talking about this film in particular, and let me just say what this film is about. Conversations with death row inmate Michael Perry and those affected by his crime serve as an examination of why people and the state kill. So if you ever debate anything about the death penalty, this is the film for you, or whether it should or should not be there. But he was talking about how, I mean, like with any documentary, I'm sure you tend to have like some idea of where you want a film to go. But when he's doing these interviews, and he also didn't use the word interview, he said, I don't do interviews. I have conversations with people. But there were some of these things where it's like he'd only have like a few minutes to talk to someone. Literally like a ticking clock of like the guy he's interviewed is going to be executed. Like they weren't going to delay his execution for Werner Herzog's documentary. But that's the thing that's so amazing about documentaries in general, and especially someone like him who's just like, okay, we're just going to go with the flow and we're going to see what's going to happen. And out of that, they're able to get this incredible footage and moments, and he brings these things out of people. He really seems like someone who's able to read people. And this isn't even like a fairly interesting, I mean, it's still, I mean, any murder is horrible, but for those who watch all the serial killer things where it's like, oh, like, what are all these things? It's like, this is like a seemingly random thing that kind of happened. It's just like your kind of average murder wasn't really sensationalized in any way. Like some of these other serial killers, they weren't serial killers. This was like one event that happened, and the result of it. And I remember this raises a lot of questions. There were two men that were involved in this crime, and it's like one of them gets the death penalty, the other one doesn't. And I don't know, it raises a lot of interesting questions about like why certain people get different sentences or not. But this has always just been like one of the big documentaries that I remember watching. Somehow was not nominated for best documentary at the Oscars, which is stupid.
Well, the documentary voting at the Oscars has long been very suspect, as we've gone over a couple times. We're just like, I don't know how this movie did not win, or like, and the movies that won, we're just like, okay, these are the ones that literally challenged the viewer the least, are the movies that win those awards at the documentary awards at the Oscars.
Yeah.
So a movie like this, which really challenges you and doesn't give you easy answers, they don't like that. They don't like to feel that way after a movie. So I feel like, and he doesn't live to make movies that just, make you happy. Then that interview that I sent you that we were talking about, it was funny because what prompted that talk about, or that comment about interviews, he said that students would always ask him like, well, what is your secret to your interviews? How do you get these interviews? And he's like, well, I don't view them as interviews. I view them as conversations with people. And when you're conversing with someone, you're getting more of the real person out of them than when you're like trying to do a formal interview and you're very separate from that person in a way. I think there's just something about him that, that people are drawn to. Like, I think there's as kooky as people might think he is, I think there's an innate humanity when you're with him that is always there and it's not put on. And I think people can feel and see that, especially when they're perhaps in a more sensitive place and all of those things sort of stand out in relief against everything else. Like any little thing could stand out. And I feel like he comes across as someone who's at the very least genuine. Even if he's maybe being a little judgmental in some way, which I don't think he really is. I think he just has a very humane vision of how things should be between people. But he talked about how when he films, he doesn't use the screen, like a screen that shows you what you're seeing in front of the camera. Yeah, he doesn't like those. He really hates them. He thinks that like basically it's just another layer that separates you from the people you're filming and the movie you're making. So you have all these people looking at screens all around getting, and he made a joke about how when he first started making movies in Hollywood, and they were like, people were telling him, you need coverage, you need this. And he's like, I don't even know these terms. I just shoot what I need. And that's why I usually end up shooting a lot less time than was scheduled. I usually need less time than that because I shoot what I know I need. And I think he was working on some movie with Nicolas Cage, and people were giving Werner Herzog grief. He's like, I had to secretly ask somebody what coverage was because they were like, everyone was forcing me to like try to do this. And it got to a point where Nicolas Cage, I think they were on a break from filming, or so they were waiting for another actor to arrive to film a scene. And Nicolas Cage got up on an Apple box and he's like, guys, this guy knows what he's doing. I've never worked with anybody this good, like who's this on top of things. Like, just like, we're just gonna do things his way. Like, so he basically had to tell. He's like, after that, I got no more questions about coverage. Like, it was just like crazy. Like the to think that it had to get to that length. And I'm like, did the crew? You would think they'd know who they were working with, but it gives you a sense of him as like, how he sees things. Like, he just wants to be as connected to these people as possible when he's filming them. Because he says, like, what you end up with all these people have shot a bunch of garbage. And now you're trying to make a film out of this garbage that you've collected. And then it's not until you get into post-production that you realize the mistakes you've made. And it's too late to fix them. You need to fix them at the time you're filming them. That's when you need to do this. So he's very like conscious of how he relates to all these people who are in front of his camera. He wants as little as a division between them as possible, which then makes people think like, oh, well, that's kind of hypocritical because your movies are so stylized. And in his view, that's his pathway to giving you the truth. So he gets really interesting things out of people when he talks to them that you just don't see in a lot of other documentaries. Because like you said, like, he kind of just digs deep into this one crime, and it, like you said, totally random. It's not like some dastardly conspiracy with all these weird twisted elements. It's literally just some people who had fucked up lives who did something fucked up, and it really cost them. And there's no rhyme or reason as to why some were punished the way they were and why some weren't. And just digging into that, he brings out all this natural drama that's in there. Like, you don't have to be Ted Bundy to make an interesting subject for a documentary. So please don't do that, anybody. Obviously, we should know that, but as we know from some of our series, murderers certainly do have groupies.
They do.
These murderers did not.
No.
But some of those interviews that you'll see, like, it came up, like, he was there to interview somebody else, and he's like, "Oh, who's this person with you?" And they're like, "Oh, this person was there when this happened, and then saw that or whatever." And he's like, "Oh, I want to talk to that guy." So he, like, that was why on the fly he was like, "Okay, well, now we're going to interview you because you definitely are going to have something to contribute to this."
Yeah.
But it's interesting to look at this movie now because I haven't watched it, I think, since I took that class on Herzog and Errol Morris at Cal, and that was the last time I watched this movie.
Yeah, I've watched it. I think with Today, this will be the third time I have seen this film. I think it used to be on Netflix or something. I think I had randomly watched it. I think maybe I'd seen it in school and thought like, oh, my dad will think this is funny. Not funny. Sorry, I read Walter's comment on funny. That's what came out of that. This movie is not funny at all.
No.
I thought this was a good movie and thought my dad would enjoy it. Not funny at all. But it's a very bleak story. And this is our murder pick for the out of our documentary series that we're doing.
I love that the way that this is our murder pick.
Yeah. We're just trying to cover a lot, okay? We're talking about organized crime in Mexico. We're talking about white collar crime. Talking about this. Next week, we're going to talk about pedophiles. So we're getting a full range.
Even more than that. That next week's movie is like.
Well, it's true. It's not just
We'll get there. We'll get there though.
Else for next week's documentary. Oh my god, it's the most insane story ever. It's insane. But this movie, I'm trying to think if I would consider giving trigger warnings for this movie. I don't know. It kind of depends on how sensitive you are to murder subjects. I mean, certainly if you're a fan of watching any sort of other murder documentaries, you're fine. But it's really, not an uplifting movie. It's not uplifting at all.
Yeah, it doesn't depict like any like live violence or you'll hear people talking about violence and acts that committed, but you will not see like they're not going to recreate the murder. This movie is Werner Herzog is not the kind of documentary filmmaker that does a lot of recreations. That's more of an Errol Morris thing, where there's a lot of recreations of events, and that's just another adding a different level of stylization that's brought in. But Werner Herzog doesn't really do that. But he really does try to get to like the center of each person he interviews in some way. Like he's trying to get through to them and asking them pointed questions. Like he's not afraid to ask a pointed question. But so it is like this journey that he kind of goes on to get the truth out of these people in some way, like a bigger truth beyond just, okay, you shot this person when did you put their body here? Like,
how did you feel?
He's like, he's not trying to just like prove the case to you with this movie. He's trying to get at something, a much larger subject that I think he does actually really tap into in this movie. But I'll let people be the judge of it when you watch it. It is not, like I said, like Amy said, it's a pretty bleak movie. It's not a happy experience, but I do think it's a really great movie and, essential to understanding our criminal justice system in some way on a deeper level.
I think that's very well said. So Into the Abyss, it might be available on AMC Plus. It also, according to IMDb, might be on, if you have the IFC Films Unlimited, it might be on that. I have neither of these, so I'll probably
rent it.
Yeah, but it is available to rent. But please check it out and then join us tomorrow to discuss it. We have a fun film for tomorrow. All this month we've been ending the week on really fun films. Tomorrow is a Patreon pick from our dear friend Crystal. The film is Hook. That's what she picked. And that is our cult classic. It's streaming on DirecTV. Well, I don't have that either. Okay. Not helpful. Not helpful. But we're doing Hook, so please join us for that. Speaking of Patreon picks, if you want to contribute to next month's calendar, do it soon. If you want to join our Patreon and get our screenwriter tier or higher for that, because we have almost all of our calendar picked out for next month. And starting, pretty much like by Monday, we will be finalizing everything. So I'd say within today through this weekend, if that's something you want to join, I put the link in the comments. Otherwise, just join anyway. Some of our lower tiers, you don't get to pick a movie, but we still appreciate. And I don't like Instagram chat. I love Instagram because he brought me back. But we always support watching your films legally. So even if it was for that Instagram, yes, watch your film legally, rent it, find it on a streaming app, a legal streaming app. But check out our Patreon. It is available in the comments at your convenience. But tomorrow, join us for our after the movie discussion of Into the Abyss, followed by Hook, a fun family favorite. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Mwah.